It is funny. I was thinking about that myself the other day about, being a teenager and just like I wasn't very good with girls. And, my way in, which hasn't changed that much, is I'd try and be funny. I'll charm them. I'll make them laugh. And as a teenager, that doesn't cut it. No. That's not what they're looking for. Like, because they have their own, dreams and fantasies about the kind of boys that they want to be with and stuff. And there's no posters of, like comedians on their walls. And so I couldn't understand why they'd always go for like the dickbag at my school who was like good looking and good at sport and stuff. But he wasn't funny. He didn't know the young ones off by heart. Why is she hanging out with him? But then it's like, oh yeah, of course, man. Of course they wouldn't. Like, what are you offering them that is even vaguely related to what they're interested in?
Well, but also, and vice versa. Like, you're doing the version of something that might be interesting to them in 10 years or 20 years when they, discover that like somebody they can hang out with and laugh with and those sort of things is much more important than perhaps those, those other superficial things. But you're also a teenager. Like, you're also, all your things are superficial things. So you're not, like, if they're doing something cool, like they've got some quirky thing or whatever. Like, I don't remember being a teenager and going like, I'm really into Joanne because like she's so good at stamp collecting and I just admire her passion for,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was also like, there's a couple of girls that we were friends with that were dating older boys, guys who had left school or, maybe first, second year uni. And I was always like, oh, fucking that's, those guys are gross and what are they doing? But then you get out of high school and you look back at teenage boys and you're like, oh, fuck, no wonder. Like, if that's what you had to choose from, or a guy who could drive, maybe had a job, could take you to nice things, didn't just want to talk about the young ones.
I mean, when I was in year 12, I went out with this like really lovely girl called Beth English, and she was, so we started going out when I was in year 11 and she was in year 12, I believe. And then she ended up like going away to uni and I was in year 12, but we were like dating and it was great because she would like come and pick me up from school in a car and like all these sort of things. But I always was like, this is great for me, but what is in this for you? Like, this is I feel like I am not bringing much to this relationship.
That is interesting, isn't it? Because often the reverse, you never really question it. And you think, oh, well, because girls mature faster than guys, and it does sort of make a lot of sense. But then on the occasion where it's like a woman in her mid-20s and she's dating a guy who's just out of high school, you're like, this seems weird. Unless this dude is incredibly sophisticated, what's going on here?
Right.
Were you incredibly sophisticated?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I've ever been incredibly sophisticated. So it'd be surprising if I was in year 11.
You're doing your dissertation of the young ones. I'm there quoting it, but you're going, well, the interesting thing about the young ones is it's really just a deconstruction of the post-Thatcher environment for university students.
And then they're all like, you're too smart. Devolve a little bit. If you want to be relatable, you're really going to have to dumb it down a bit, mate.
Well, it's funny. Podcast Mike is my guest on Fofop this week, and it was a very great chat. But we did talk a little bit about the new Jackass film, and I was saying to him that I love Jackass and have watched all of them. And this new one, I enjoyed. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't watch because it's just a bit too gross. I love all the kind of dumb stunts. I'm not so hot on the vomiting and the shit and all that kind of gross kind of stuff. But I do love that every time there is a new Jackass thing, there is a portion of the audience that are like, oh, it's Jackass, it's funny, I'm going to watch this. But then there's a writer for the New York Times or Rolling Stone who does this kind of Jackass, an analysis of masculinity in the 21st century. And you're like, I think you're granting it maybe a bit too much depth to it. I honestly think the guys doing Jackass know what Jackass is, but you were trying to justify why you enjoy watching Jackass.
I know what you mean. Absolutely, I do know what you mean. But I watched it, the latest one, and you know what I'm like with vomiting and stuff like that. That is not my cup of tea at all. But I did feel like, as a piece of entertainment in the times in which we live, whether they mean it to be or not, it felt really relevant to the times. That's what I would say. I would just say, in the same way as Hannah Gadsby didn't sit down and say, I'm going to write in a net a thing that will hit the world at the time where the world is having a conversation about the very thing that I'm having a conversation about. She didn't like plan that out. She just made a piece of art that was really important to her, and then the times just suited that piece of art. So, look, yes, I am comparing Jackass to Nanette, and this is my 1,000-word piece for the New York Times op-ed page. No, but I think that it is, like, there is something about it, because for me, I loved it. I honestly laughed so much. But I also think that in these times where there is so much chaos in the world in which we live, and the reaction to that chaos often feels very nihilistic, and to laugh in the absurdity of life, you know, to be able to have to, that what they do on that show does feel like it is a deconstruction of that. And it also feels like the last bastions of old school masculinity and dumbness and these things that have led to, like, that this is kind of fun and dumb, but the world has become like that, but in a serious way, you know, that our information is dumb, and that, like, dumbness is celebrated in a way that it used to be sidelined to going, this is a dumb thing. And to see those male friendships develop and people be broken down a little by life and hurt more by life, and to be able to see them try to redo something they'd been able to do in their youth and not necessarily be able to do it in the same way.
The Johnny Knoxville, and not to give a spoiler, the Johnny Knoxville stunt at the end, like, I was genuinely upset. Like, I just, because of his age, because of how violent it was, like, Gemma and I both were like, oh no. It was upsetting, and I was kind of like, what do you got to prove, mate? Like, you don't need to play. I think I would have enjoyed the film just as much, but I think there wasn't.
That you're coming from a guy who's put his neck out reading a book. This is you're not the guy to ask, but I agree. It feels like there is more stakes on the line, and so on all of those levels, I really did. Like, I agree that I don't think that the guys from Jackass get together and go, we're going to make this huge statement on the times in which we live. But do I think that somehow they've just managed to, what they are captures a whole bunch of, like, things about the world in which we live? I do think that that is the case. I don't think it's just dumb stunts. I think that there is this kind of story to it. And in fact, I enjoy it a lot more now than I did when it first came out.
Don't get me wrong. I think there's an awful lot of creativity in what they do. And obviously the minds behind it. Like, it's not just pointless. There is an element of, you know, saying something. But it's more in the same way that, like, if you look at the way modern masculinity is represented by, say, like Joe Rogan's audience, or, you know, that sort of Rogan phenomena. And you're right. It's very self-serious. Like, it's kind of, there's an element of cruelty to it, an alpha-ness to it. And if you're overweight or you're different or you're shit, then that's a flaw and you need to improve that, and you're a weak bitch and you need to work harder to improve. Whereas Jackass embraced that. If you're overweight or you're a bit slow or whatever, we love you no matter what. If you're one of us, we love you, but if you're one of us, you're going to do this dumb thing, because we're all idiots in the way. And I think that, but that to me is baked into who those guys are. I don't necessarily think it's a conscious decision. They just sort of play to what that, like, I can't remember if it was this show or Two Guys One Cup where we talked about male friendship. There's a large element of bullying to male friendship. Like, it's how we say we love each other, you know, it's how we bond, you know, and we all understand that when it's your turn, you're the target of the bullying. Like, that's, I was saying to Jen the other day, because she made fun of me in front of friends of ours the other day, and then I was like, oh, hey, like, you know, I don't make fun of you in the same way. Why did you make fun of me? And she's gone, because that's what you do to yourself, and I see you do with your guy friends. I'm just doing what you, and I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. I just wasn't expecting it to come. Like, I wasn't armored and ready for it to come from you. I thought it was like, you know, I was in my safe space with you, but then to hear you make fun of me is like, but that is kind of what male friendship is. Like, there's just a large element of identifying someone's flaws, making fun of that flaws, but accepting of them because of those flaws.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the greatest part of it is what you've said, is that it is really genuinely a show about people who are absolutely flawed and are almost, you know, showing off their flaws and their imperfections. Like, it. Anyway, I really fucking enjoyed it, and I'm going to write an op-ed piece.
To see the full video, join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/Tofop.